Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to resilience, crisis management, business continuity, COVID, anything that's relatable to those topics, anything that helps you, your organization, or your community plan for and prepare and respond to and overcome adverse situations. If there is a topic you'd like us to talk about on the show or you'd like to be a guest, please feel free. You can reach out and find me on LinkedIn. That seems to be the easiest way to reach me because I am the only Alex Fullick on LinkedIn. So I'm very easy to find. And I do respond to everything, and we'll see about getting you on the show or finding someone to come on the show and talk about what you'd like us to chat about. Longtime listeners and viewers, you'll know that I've mentioned quite a few times I was a speaker at the BCI Virtual World Conference in 2020 in November, and that I hope to get some other speakers to come on the show and talk about their topics or something else that's relatable. And today is one of those days. I'd like to welcome to the show the author of, or the presenter, I should say, on the topic of resiliency through relationships. I'd like to welcome to the show, Rina Singh. Rina, welcome.
Hi, Alex. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, some people might recognize your name. Could you give us a minute or two to introduce yourself, what you do, and how you got into this industry?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, my role, like many others in the industry, is to help you prepare and respond and essentially become resilient in our crazy world full of disruptions. I do that primarily via business continuity. So full-time job. I fell into it by accident. So again, one of those industry folk that didn't plan their career in this. It just kind of happened to me, and I have never looked back.
I'm the same way. Fell into it by accident and haven't looked back since, 23 years later. now,
Absolutely.
now I mentioned some people might recognize the name. If people don't recognize the name, I'm going to tell you who Rina is. Rina is the host of ResiliencePod. Rina, can you tell us about what you talk about on the show?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So yeah, the Resilience Pod is your one-stop shop full of podcasts, videos, and blogs, all helping you become resilient in our world full of disruption. So essentially, it's unmasking the facade of our resilience industry, talking to experts globally and their experiences of actually working here, making people accessible, and actually sharing those personal stories of those who have not only helped their organizations become resilient, but who have overcome some sort of adversity or demonstrated resilience themselves. Because at the end of the day, resilient people make resilient organizations.
Welcome to the show. I have a little bit of a celebrity on today. And for anyone who didn't catch the name of the podcast, it's Resilience Pod. I just want to make sure I get the name right, correct?
Yes, Resilience Pod, yeah. And you can
Excellent.
find it everywhere. Just Google it and it will be there, yeah.
Well, great. I'm glad to have you on the show. Now, I mentioned the topic, resiliency through relationships. Before we even jump into that, because there are so many people who talk about resilience and so many definitions, how do you define and describe resilience?
Yeah, you know what? It's such a buzzword, isn't it, Alex? And it
Mhm.
can mean different things in different industries, but specifically for our industry, when we're looking at resilience, it's I see it like an umbrella. So if we open up an umbrella, that's the word. And then in from an organizational perspective, it's those disciplines that are helping the organization carry on. So we're looking at disciplines like business continuity, crisis management, risk management, weather resilience, IT recovery, those kind of disciplines that help you prepare and protect and then respond and recover essentially. Now, I understand that business isn't just about disciplines, but you have, HR and legal side and all that kind of stuff, elements that help run a business. But essentially, it's about coming together and joining things up and not working in silos. So from an organizational perspective, it's making sure that you have those disciplines and those expertise that can, as I said, help you respond, recover, prepare, protect. And from a personal side, then navigate your challenges and the way you think to become resilient. Because if you're going around telling your organizations, you got to be resilient, but your life is in total chaos. Like, how do you manage that? How do you manage the stresses and the well-being side of it? So there's two sides of that. Now, resilience also is a different industry where we're looking at coaching, as I said, well-being, mental health, all that awareness. But for this podcast and for this sake, we're looking at, like you say, preparing for the unexpected in our organizations, but having a human element of it as well.
So is it fair
So
to
yeah.
say you really can't have a resilient uh, organization or resiliency within your organization if, let's have some fun with this, your people are messed up?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You can't. And I think often as organizations, if you reflect on the organization that you're working for, do they actually incorporate that in any of their plans? Is the people are your business, your processes, no matter how we have, and I'll go into that as we talk further. But are you looking at your people's welfare? Are you building that in? Are you giving them the trade? Don't We're not all born and we know how to deal with these things. So it's about kind of having that awareness and actually thinking about it in the planning stages, because preparation is everything, as I am sure all your listeners will be aware of.
Now, that brings up an interesting point. Considering we are in the middle of a global pandemic, we don't. There is some light at the end of the tunnel, but we really don't
Yeah.
know when things will be declared, quote unquote, over. Is there a greater challenge in people and organizations trying to be resilient during a pandemic? Because we're all in the same boat, and it doesn't matter if you're the president of a company or not. You're still faced with COVID and COVID issues. How do you address challenges like that, trying to keep a resilience focus for your organization, you know, while going through this?
Yeah, it's important, Alex, and it's important to look individually at your organization and think, are there tools and methods to help you through this? So is your organization like putting on well-being sessions? Is there an employee assistance program like that? That's what we call it here in the UK. So is there something equivalent of that in your organization, which should be a legal requirement for all organizations to do? Especially, I know that in the UK, is there that support there? Is management driving you through the ground, or is there culture where we're Zoom fatigued now? Can you take five to from between one meeting and the next? What's the culture? Are you expected to be on video be like you would at work, or are you actually understanding that people have a life as well? So we're working at home and there's other challenges with family and so forth. So what support mechanisms are you giving to your staff and their well-being? And finally, are you encouraging people to take annual leave? We can't travel in this pandemic. However, we still need time out. So even if you're sitting at home, it's still better than just working 24/7 and not taking any of your leave. You need that time to kind of sit back, refocus, and not think about work, to get that balance of resiliency. So are you actually doing these things? Is your employer encouraging it? And if not, you should actually think and take control for yourself and feel like, yes, for my own well-being, I'm going to take a day off. And it doesn't mean I think the perception is, oh, I'm not going to waste my annual leave because I'm not going anywhere. But you don't always have to be doing something. The beauty is in actually being bored. We have so many distractions, but let's remember the time had the privilege to be bored and get creative and actually reflect on life, because I think that helps us become a bit more resilient and express that gratitude in this pandemic, because I feel personally that that's everything. It helps you reframe some of the negative things that are going on in the world.
Yeah, you do. We have to be able to step back. It's interesting you mentioned Zoom fatigue. There was a commercial here in Canada that I saw just a little while ago, and it depicted a bunch of people on a Zoom type meeting, and a couple of people didn't want to be on camera. I forget the actual topic, but what struck me is
Yeah.
there were people who said, no, I'm really not in the mood, today. And that kind of tells me, some people, they just don't want to be on camera because they just want to be comfortable, let the shoulders down, put the hat on backwards or whatever the case may be, and just, okay, it's a down day. I'm tired of, having to be shoulders up, big smile on camera for my boss, and
Yeah.
it's interesting that you mentioned Zoom fatigue, and I guess when people start feeling like that, that could have ripple effects, on their work, and towards the organization itself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a real thing. It's not just a fancy trend that's happening. And it's being aware of that and speaking out if there isn't that culture in your organization where you're that expectation, because it does affect your resilience, your mental well-being, being on point all the time. It's not real.
Mhm.
Even when you go into the office, if you remember if you remember those days, you have off days. You're not always going to be like, in your top pristine conditions. So it's just making it a bit real, and being okay with that, because it gets a bit personal, because you're seeing people in their homes, like we're here, you're seeing like grounded in my home, and it's nice because it's that sense of personal belonging as well, which you don't really get to see. So I think it adds different dimensions, but you don't need to always be online and be seen to be working as well. So I could talk about it for hours, but yeah, essentially awareness in this is key.
It's interesting you said that, being seeing your house. If I'm not doing a show for, Voice America, the YouTube channel, what people see behind me is a green screen. Behind that is
Mhm.
bookshelves, and lots of stuff on, all over the place, because my office is also a studio. It's where I do writing. It's
Mhm.
where I do filming, everything. So it can be a mess. So if you want to see what I really look like, wait till I'm on a Zoom call that's not for YouTube or something. Then it's the curtain's gone, and I'm just sitting here, hi, like relaxed, like I said, my shoulders don't have to be up in a big smile, for the
Agreed.
YouTube channel. It's different because I have to have the chance to let my hair down. You know.
Yeah. And that's what it is, isn't it? It's that realness, because and I have a very big advocacy on this, because we want to be seen as perfect all the time, and the world is more complex. We're like a myriad of personalities and people. So why not show that authentic self? Because it's normal, and let's normalize this. Because when you're putting on a show or a perception, that actually makes it more stressful, and that doesn't help towards personal resilience. And then if you're responsible, for your organization, of delivering any form of resilience, if you've not got that personal side sorted out, you're not going to really be able to do that for your organization in that authentic and way, and with integrity.
And that's not just for employees without a hierarchical title. I think the
Yeah.
same applies to presidents, CEOs, vice presidents, directors, managers, team leaders, whatever level, or whatever title people have. But they have to be doing the same things, right? They can't simply be pushing all this down. They've got to be the same, in the same boat.
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, these kind of messages and culture comes from the top. So if you've seen, say, your director like dress casually, and they're showing their home, and like a cat pops up on the screen, you kind of feel like, oh, it gives you that, it takes that pressure off, as you said, and that's something that's really important when we're working in this crazy time. So yeah, spot on with that. I think that's important for the listeners to really think about and understand.
And I guess in a way that's showing your human side, not just showing your managerial, duties, and the managerial facade,
Mhm.
but showing your human side that, like, hey, I may have manager in front of my name, but, or after my name, but you know what, I get the same interruptions you guys get, everyone else does, my dog wants attention, same time my kid is screaming, like, I have to do, I live the same things you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have no shame in admitting that. If I'm working and I'm having an off day, I'll call one of my colleagues. I'm like, oh, just not feeling it today. And you have that chat because you miss that social interaction. You just can't go up and make a cup of tea, as we Brits love it, rather than the coffees. And
You know,
um,
tea is good. I've got a full cup here.
yeah, tea is good. Well, you know what? I've lived in Canada, and I used to have tea there, and it just I kind of switched from a coffee kind of girl. But yeah, it's that the water cooler in moments that you miss. So even just having five, I think it's really important to the personal resilience side of it, because let's forget everything else. That is key. I'm going to keep going on about it and go on about it all the time, but here it's just I just can't reinforce it enough for people listening or watching us to really kind of reflect on that message.
Well, it also helps. The way I see it is build some resilience because you're able to break down some of the barriers between people, and you can start bouncing ideas and thoughts back and forth because you're building a not just a working relationship but a personal relationship too. So if I am having a bad day, I can reach out to Rena because I know you said you had a bad day the other day, that you know what, oh, I feel like you did the other day, and you're able to convey, oh well, go for a tea, go do something, like we're able to build a different kind of rapport rather than do you have the report. We're building a rapport instead. you know
Exactly. And that's why later we're going to talk about resiliency through relationships, and that gives you a bit of a sneak peek about what that actually means and entails.
right at the end of our first segment, I talked about rapport between people, and you mentioned resiliency through relationships, which was a perfect segue. What kind of relationships are you talking about? Work colleagues, internal, external, family? What do you mean by relationships?
So, Alex, perfect time. Resiliency through relationships. I think I need to like trademark this phrase, because anybody who knows me knows I say it all the time, and they're probably sick of hearing me say it. But we need that to succeed in our resiliency efforts. And before I explain what that means, I want to kind of take a step back and give you my rationale for using that. Technology is awesome. It helps us become way more efficient at delivering our resilience work. So, for example, if I'm doing business continuity for an organization and I move into the technological space and I'm managing my data and information through there, that's perfect. But people still give you that information, that qualitative data. A computer doesn't, a piece of software doesn't. And you need a relationship to get that data and to make sure that you're getting that experience from the business, which is the people, to then deliver the right sort of resiliency and plans and find out what's important and so forth. So it's important for the success of any resilience program. And that's why I say resiliency through relationships, because relationships is that key part. You need to build that and have that rapport, like what we were saying before. And there's really simple ways to do that. And I will explain that in a moment. But some people think, oh no, I can't build a relationship with someone. I'm just going to email them and say, right, here you go, do this. And then that's it. And they'll do what I say. Well,
No, that doesn't always happen.
it ain't gonna happen. Like, we don't like being told what to do generally. So that having that relationship and making it resilient, where it's mutually beneficial and so forth, it really helps drive what you want to achieve going forward. And that's why it's important to, whilst we become so advanced and we use different tools to really advance, you still need that collaboration, and that happens through relationships.
So how do you go about initiating that kind of a thing? Because I'm assuming this right now we're talking about organizational resiliency and people within an organization. So if I need something from you, data to do what I need to do, how do I initiate? I've never spoken with Rena before. She has no idea who
Mhm.
I am, but I need something from her to do my job. How do I go about initiating that relationship?
Well, you're in luck because I've got 4 key tips to share with you and all the listeners. And these are 4 key tips that have worked real life for me in the success of doing it. So I'm not sitting here saying "Yeah, you should do X, Y, and Z. It's textbook theory. These are proven strategies. And you're going to be surprised. They're very simple and really easy to do. So, step one is actually, first of all, people need to know who you are and you need to do an introduction. So we were saying before that, oh yeah, you can't just send an email out and then say, right, I need this report. I need you to fill out this BIA template, a business impact analysis template, get it back to me by Thursday. And you're like, hello, like, who are you?
Who are you? What's a
You know,
BIA? Why do I have to do this? What's it going to do? What's in it for me?
exactly. Exactly, all these questions. And and first of all, what do you exactly do? Who are you? What's your role in the organization? And so it like I said, people need to know who you are, and the way to do that is you send a note saying, hello, well, my name is Rina Singh, I've just joined the organization, I'm responsible for resilience and particularly business continuity. I would love to get together and maybe buy you or tea, and maybe we can just talk about what you do and then how we can work together because there's a piece of work that we need to deliver. It really is that easy. And I do this all the time, regardless of whether I'm new in an organization or I'm in an existing organization. I would introduce myself, explain my role, ask about them, and say, can we meet for half an hour? Even 20 minutes in the canteen, or you go out and buy them a coffee, whatever you want. And let's just kind of get to know each other before I bounce in there and start asking you to do all this work. I want to understand, like, how long have you been in this organization? Like, what is it that you're doing? It builds that trust, and you get familiar with it and with each other, and you get to understand what they do. So when you do ask them for something, they'll remember they had a pleasant interaction with you. Now, I'm not saying you have to go and buy thousands of people coffees because that's impossible, impossible, and it's not realistic. However, if you are responsible for delivering a piece of work that needs other people to help you, you need to meet them face to face. And I know it's difficult to do that in a pandemic, but you can just have a video call. We're adapting to this, but where possible, go and meet the people. And you need that buy-in from the top, from your management, to let you do this and spend time, because there's that perception that, oh well, our organization thinks meeting for a casual chat and a coffee is a waste of time. Well, no, actually, a lot of ideas and stuff happen when people are relaxed and they're in an informal setting, and that creativity happens. So you need to have a manager, or if you're responsible for it, empower your team to go out there and have a coffee for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, even an hour. It's the time you invest in building that relationship at the start essentially is going to help you going forward. So, Alex, I've met you for a coffee. I bought you one. We've kind of chatted about stuff. You're going to remember me next time an email pops up.
Hmm. Well, the
100%.
the other nice thing is too, when you and I go for a coffee, you may tell me, you know what, I know someone else who can help you with that. And or if you're meeting with someone who's a manager, let's say, they can say, oh, you know what, don't bother sending a message to all the staff, I'll do it. Just send me the basic words I should use, I'll send it for you, and get them to help you out. So just by doing it once, you can actually create a larger relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of is another tip that I bring further down. So, you've built that kind of connection. Email pops up, for example, which is different, because just take a moment to step back and think, how many people have actually done that in your work environment, actually extended a little bit of a social, like, let's get away from our desks and connect. Like, have they done that? Have they tried to understand it? Probably not a lot of people. So that essentially immediately that sets you apart, because you're these are the soft skills that we need. And some people hate the word soft skills, but we don't
Mm,
get trained on them. This is like essential to the industry that we're in. So just remember to be human. So that's tip one. People need to know who you are and that you exist, and that personalization. And then number two is to that mutually beneficial relationship. So just as you said, like, oh, well, how can I help you? Well, actually, I know somebody in another team with that piece of work. So you're helping each other. And I've done that so many times. Like organize, no matter how much they say that they don't do this, there is so many silos, and there
mhm,
will be some form of silo somewhere. And you, in this unique role of doing resilience, for example, business continuity, you know the whole organization simply by interacting with them. So you've got connections already. You've got that upper hand in that sense. So in the past, when I've gone to like step number two, creating that mutually beneficial relationship, and I've listened, um, I've introduced people to other areas of the department where they didn't even know that they existed for one example, and where there's issues with buying, personalities clash. It's all often my department against your department. Like, we don't want to talk to them because they're in the ivory tower and we're operational. So
mm.
they think that they can just tell us what to do. Break down that, create mutually beneficial relationships. Now, there's a disclaimer on that. Some people will think, well, why should I just give? What's in me? I trust me. I know sometimes it feels like all you're doing is giving, and babysitting one person from A to B. But when you require something, let me guarantee you, people will remember that favors you've done for them. And that's how the world works, that's how business works. They will remember that you introduced them to a different department, or you helped them out, you went out of your way to do this piece of work, and then they will help you deliver your objectives. So it's not a sneaky way, that's just how it works. Add the value first, and then you get. So that's tip two. So tip one was introduce yourself. People need to know that you exist. Tip two is create those mutually beneficial relationships. Again, let me just put it out there. These things take time. So don't expect results straight away. You know, so that's it. Tip three, Alex, is actually educating people on what you're trying to get them to do. So let's rewind to when I emailed you and said, Alex, without any introductions, please complete this business impact. What? What is that?
Yeah.
So, so help people understand what it is you do in simple terms. As resilience professionals, how many times have you gone in and used jargon in the industry? You don't need to do that. People don't understand, they don't care, they've got other frustrations going on in their own world. So help them understand the bigger picture. Explain, well, I'm going to use business continuity for an example, as an example, right? Business continuity means this for our organization, it's this, and we're going to focus on this, achieving this particular objective and service. So we've got to go around and ask everybody what they do, so we can understand and take a risk-based approach to see which departments, activities and services is going to be more critical when something does go wrong. It's not if, but when, as we all know. So, and then they're thinking, okay, now I understand why I've got to do this analysis, and I understand the bigger picture, what the organization think the objective is. We're not trying to here recover everything and everybody is important. And you can use some of the things that have happened in the past in the organization where it's failed, and explain to them that actually we need to do it in this way. Or if your organization is adopting a risk-based view, to say, right, we're doing it in this way because of X, Y, and Z. When you do, it helps people understand. So you're the head of department, it helps you understand why you're doing it, and then it makes you think, okay, you're doing it like that. What it also does is it helps the other person be accountable for the work, because accountability in our discipline is so hard to get. Okay, how just think about all the programs that you've done. How many times have you gone and facilitated sessions and then people something happens, they're like, I didn't do that. Alex did or Rina did. Like it's her business impact, it's her plan. She wrote it. I just kind of, said that. Make things easier, but get them the ownership, and ownership only doing it and what that means for the business and where I fit into that slot. I feel that people often get this so wrong. So help them understand what it means.
Well, I remember being in a situation before we moved to point number 4 that uh, was in a group setting, and people were saying, well, no, Alex owns all this. Alex owns all that. And someone else spoke up and said, well, if Alex owns all of that, why are you here? And their face went blank. Like, oh, yeah, I guess I am responsible for all of that. It's like, yeah, you don't just transfer all your responsibility over to somebody else.
Yeah, it's so true, and it's this those misconceptions, right? Because we're just mere facilitators. You can have all the fancy titles you want, but actually we're facilitating our organization to extract this information from people, might I just add. So you need to help them understand what it means. So that's tip 3. So we've got introduce yourself, create mutually beneficial relationships, educate others on the discipline. So business continuity for this example, and get that buy-in and ownership. And then the 4th tip is actually continue the relationship. Okay, now I know that sounds really easy and you're probably thinking, what, how is this even a tip, number 4? But it happens. You do your work and then goodbye, never seen you. You disappear off the face of the planet, and then 2 years later when you got to review your plan, you're like, hi, remember me, we did the BIA together. And by then people are like, what the hell is a BIA? So continue it, follow up, whether it's the first time or the 1900th time, create that relationship. It it's effort, but even if you're just like, hi, how you doing, how was your Christmas, how was Easter, or how's things going, it's, I think, common courtesy to maintain that relationship. Or you're in the office environment and you see someone, you ask them how their work's going. Do you know what happens when you continue the relationship? You get to find out what's going on in other parts of the organization. And by doing that as a default, you can actually contribute to greater resilience because you're having those casual conversations. There has been many times that I've continued the relationships and then I found out a piece of work was going on and they were redoing it again. And I'm like, oh, by the way, I've got a team doing resiliency and business continuity. We can help with that. Just done what to and then forgot about it, I would never have known. And then again, you're creating that siloed code. It slips back into that bit. So maintaining that relationship is really important, and it doesn't really take much. I'm not saying do it 5 hours a day for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
It reminds me back in the day of working with colleagues who were smokers, and they would go out, for their smoke breaks, and more often than not, they would come back, sit beside me and go, guess what I just heard? Such and such is going on. Not rumors and stuff like that, but such and such is happening. Does that impact us anyway? And so I'm not telling anyone they have to go start smoking, but I'm just saying that, those people were building what you just said, friendships and relationships, and then learning new things about the organization as they had their chats.
Yeah. You know what? One thing I do without the smoking thing, if to a different office for a different meeting, I'll make a point of remembering who's in that office, like some of my stakeholders, and say, well, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? I've got 20 minutes in between a meeting, or let's go for lunch with another person. And it's casual, you're building that relationship. And I've done that so many times. Like if I've been, so I live in Milton Keynes, and if I've gone to London, which is about a 45-minute train ride away, and I'll make use of my day. So I'll build that relationships. Or even after work, if I'm in the area, I'll be like, let's grab a quick dinner or a drink. And that, you know what, that makes such a difference to then the next time you need something and your name pops up.
Yeah,
You've got that connection. And that's so important.
lots of great information. I really like those 4 tips. They do sound so simple. I know some of the examples that we touched on were organizational or work related. Can you give, recap the 4 tips, but give us some examples on how we can leverage them in our personal lives?
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. And the easiest way to think about this is making friends. Okay, we've all done that in part of our life from childhood to adulthood. And I agree that sometimes in adulthood it's a bit difficult, but you do the same things. People need to know you exist. So you introduce yourself, you talk about yourself, you ask the other person, you create that mutually beneficial relationship from the introduction. One way I've done that is, I've met people, or actually I've met neighbors, and then, we get that common interest and they like a bit of food. So I'll take something over that I've made, or we extend the invitation out to go for a drink or dinner. It's exactly the same thing. You're building that relationship and getting to know each other. Educate others on the subject, very business related, but it can transfer to our personal life. And that's more about getting to know each other in a friend. If you're trying to make friends personally, I think that's great, because that's exactly the same as educating others on the area. You're educating yourselves on each other and your values and what's going on in your world, and building that connection. And then fourthly, continuing the relationship. Well, personally, when you're trying to make friends, you don't just go and have one conversation and that's it. You follow up, you send a WhatsApp message like, hi, how you doing? It was really great. Or just checking in, like, what's going on, building that connection slowly. And I think one thing, a key tip and a key takeaway here, is that all this takes time. You're not going to do those 4 tips personally and in your business and suddenly get results. You're going to have to, it's a continuous cycle. The same with personal
Mhm.
life, same with making friendships, and work friendships is exactly the same. It's follow through, a cycle, and give it time.
And you can reach out,
That's it.
it doesn't necessarily have to be a coffee shop or a bar or something like that, but it could be an
No,
online
yeah.
forum, for, your favorite band or something, and just reach out and
Yeah.
create friendships that way, or if you're a knitting fanatic, find something, a knitting club, and things like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not everything has to evolve around food and drink. For me, it does, because I like that. But yeah, it's whatever interests float your boat. So you could have like a reading club or something like that. So it's it's just being consistent in it and making that effort. And I think that's where we kind of take a step back and we get discouraged, because you try it once and then you don't follow through, and then you don't get that reception that you want. But it's following through and being persistent, and that's what builds our resilience at the end of the day. And also it's knowing when to stop as well. But you build that with experience. So yeah, essentially it can be transferred to any part of your life.
And that's the perfect spot to end our talk on resiliency through relationships. I
Mhm.
wanted to specifically make time today to talk about something else you're very passionate about, and that is women in resiliency. Can you tell us about that? What you spearhead? Because I know you've got some. Well, I'll let you talk about it. I'm not going to give anything.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So yeah, women in resilience. Um, there's many of us, we in an industry where this was primarily male dominated for various reasons, but now we've seen that a lot of women are coming into this industry. And like how many times have I in the past gone to networking events, for example, events, and I've been the only female, and we realized that there's hundreds and thousands of other women who feel the same way. So why not create a group where we can support each other? So the BCI, the Business Continuity Institute, helped create this group where it was where it would focus on this. And as part of that initiative, I'm really proud to say that I am the vice chair of that group now. It's about bringing the women together in these industries, whether you're working in risk, business continuity, crisis, IT, whatever, that resilience um, type of roles, and coming together and sharing our challenges, being in the industry, empowering each other, seeing how we can advance in our careers, and actually seeing those role models in those positions doing it. So then you can think, oh, well, if she's doing it, maybe I could have that career path, which you might not think about doing. And the group is really to kind of also address some of the challenges specific to the female gender. It's not anti-men. There's men that are in the group that support and be allies too, so it's not about that. It's just about addressing some of the gender specific challenges, and having that representation and that safe space to kind of network, for example. So before COVID happened, I ran a session in London, and I ran a speed networking session. And, networking is
What's
sometimes,
the speed networking session? What's that?
yes, it's like speed dating, where you get 2 minutes each to introduce yourself, and then the buzzer goes and you talk to the next person, because we realized that a lot of people find it really intimidating, especially women, to network at events, especially when there's other women, which, different reasons aside, another podcast for another day. So created this idea, and it was just a hit, because you get 1 minute each. What do you do? Brief introduction, other person, next person. And then you do that for about 20 minutes. And then when it's time to actually do the real networking, you feel comfortable, because you're like, you said you did this role when you're the head of, or like, what does that feel like? And you get that gateway and that segue into having further, more meaningful, enriched conversations. And that's just one of the things that the Women in Resilience group does. And it's about having that safe environment where we can be each other's cheerleaders, essentially. And I think it's really important to have that, and address that. It just makes people feel part of the community, which is really good. And now being the vice chair and being in this sort of position where I get to influence the way that we do things, and really up the game and let people know that there's these things going on, and get engagement from people, especially women who might be shy to spotlight their careers or come online. It's a great position to be in, because I get people who represent someone like me. I'm a British Asian woman, and when I was started off in the industry, I didn't have someone who looked like me to role model off of, and I didn't
Mhm.
really think much of it. But now I get so many messages from different women of color, women who are very similar backgrounds to me, who are in the industry, and it just feels nice to be able to have that connection. And it's not just about your race and where you come from. It's just any woman. It's just nice to have that support network, and go away from the fact that we're not competition with each other. So yeah, I encourage everybody to search for the Women in Resilience group and join.
Thank you for that. I definitely wanted to make sure that we touched on that subject. And
Mhm.
congratulations for becoming vice chair as well.
Thank you. Yeah,
Now,
thank you.
we've only got less than 3 minutes. So
Mhm.
can you take 2 minutes with any final thoughts on resiliency, or the women in resiliency, or whatever, a final thought?
Yeah, I think you can have all the technical skills you need, but essentially, as a person in resilience, it's our job to empower a culture centered around teamwork and collaboration, and that's helps get success. So I think just bear that in mind about how you present yourself, and meaningful relationships you create, because you get better quality of information in that. After all, that's what resiliency through relationships is about.
It is, and like you pointed out during your examples and your tips, it's not just at work.
Mhm.
or just, your personal side. If you're working on one, it can help the other, right? You can
Yeah.
go back and forth, so to speak.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. So you've got to have look at yourself and your own personal resilience as well, and bear that in mind and be mindful of that and aware of that too. Because if you're in a good place yourself, that will automatically translate into your work environment, and it will show off and it will shine because people can feel that energy and vibration. So yeah, think about it together because it's not separate.
Well, thank you, Arena, for joining us. I really appreciate your insights. And I just want to reiterate, check out Rena's podcast at Resilience Pod, right? It's all,
Yes.
I keep wanting to say Resilience Podcast, but I know that's not the right name. It's Resilience
No,
Pod.
yeah, it's Resilience Pod, and or if you you can go on the website www.resiliencepod.com and you'll see it all there.
So check it out. There's a lot of great stuff there. And check out the work that BCI is doing with Rena's leadership. For women in resilience as well, check out that as well. Is there a specific website for that?
You can, so for the BCI Women in Resilience on LinkedIn, you can join our group. So just type in BCI Women in Resilience and you'll find it. And yeah, we'll it's a closed group, but I'll approve you, so it's open.
Well, I'll
It's
have to
open.
check it out. Don't
Yes.
decline me.
I won't. It's again, like I said, it's for everyone, but primarily women. But men, there are male supporters and allies in there as well. So, and if you can't find it, just look me up, Rina Singh, and I'll point you in the right direction.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Rena, for joining us today. I'm really happy, and apologies for any sound issues you may have overheard and encountered. Where I am right now, we're having a snowstorm, so it's kind of impacting us a little bit on what we're doing. But thank you so much, Rena, for sharing your knowledge and your time with me today. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
congratulations on all the work you're doing on the podcast and the Women in Resiliency. Keep
Thank you
up the good
so
work.
much. Thank you so much, Alex. A pleasure to be on here and talk to you about this. Thank you.
Wonderful. And to everybody watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave a message and let me know what your thoughts are. If you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about something related to business continuity, disaster management, COVID, personal well-being, anything that's relatable to those subjects, you can reach me through my LinkedIn profile, which is in the video description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. In the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.